Hello, my name is John Svek. Welcome to this All 24 video. Today, Coach Waterman and I are joined by a special guest. We have Coach Maxime Chaput Dupuy from Champlain. How you doing, Coach?
Good. How you guys doing? Lastly, on the line of scrimmage, the last drill we do is we'll really work on those slants, on defending that slant. All right. Obviously when we play press, the thing we'll face the most is vertical, right? So as a corner, you'll face a lot of fades and sometimes some comebacks and stuff like that. But you still want to be able and proficient to work in that slant, because that's going to be the counter route you're gonna see, especially in short yardage situations. So you want to be able to play that. So again, it comes down to winning the release. All right. So staying square and using proper hands. So I won't go back on that too much. All right. Because we just looked at that. But if you get an outside first step, you want to mirror that. So kick on top. Then when the receiver crosses your face, then you're going to bring a hand and make sure you force him down the line of scrimmage. All right. And that comes to my second point, is winning the inside position. So you're going to see here in the example we have on the right. All right. You see the DB has his right shoulder and his right arm underneath the receiver's left shoulder, right? So the receiver's trying to run a slant. His shoulder is underneath his shoulder, and he's ripping underneath that armpit, all right? That's doing two things for us. So first thing, it allows us to get a straight point to the ball, right? So when ball is coming, we're going to be right where the ball is, the catch point is, okay? Second thing is, if that receiver would want to go back to a vertical route, right? So kind of a double move, a sluggo kind of thing, right? Because we're underneath that shoulder, it's giving a real hard time for the receiver to be able to come back and club, right? If our aiming point is 1 yard in front of that receiver, well, then it's easy for the receiver to break and get back vertical. So we want to make sure we're physical underneath his shoulder. All right. And then the last thing is squeeze him on the line of scrimmage, right? If he catches the ball and he's 1 yard over the line of scrimmage, or he's on the line of scrimmage, I mean, it's just like an incomplete pass to me, right? So I'm good with that. So we want to make sure once we rip underneath that shoulder, we're squeezing him as much as possible on that line of scrimmage. The next few drills will be basically, so for downfield play, right? So once the receiver is released, how do we handle it? All right. So the first drill we do, and when I do this drill, I'll put multiple DBs going at the same time, bro. So I'll have like 5 or 6 DBs playing DBs and 5 or 6 DBs playing receiver. And it's really just going through the motion and understanding pressure points, right? So that trail and follow drill will be set up right in that hip, all right? So it's right after we're off the line, okay? I'm not playing downfield right now. We're right after we're off the line. So we'll have our close hand, so the closest hand to his hip, okay? And we don't want the hand on the hip, like on top of the hip, so he can grab those pants or grab that shirt, right? I really want to be pushing against that hip. So first thing is, by teaching that, we're going to have less chance of our DB pulling on that shirt, because we're always teaching to push against it, right? So just in terms of PI, we'll get some of those outside of our games. And the other thing is, the more you push, the more you'll feel those pressure point, right? So when you start to feel the hips drop, or you start to feel the hips go one side or the other, you'll feel that a whole lot more when you're pushing against them than when you're trying to pull this shirt, right? Your eyes, again, on the hips and on the feet. You want to see those feet if they're chopping. You want to see those hips if they're dropping, all right? So you want to make sure your eyes on that. And then you want to apply pressure. I said it when I was talking about the hip, okay? But yes, you want to apply pressure with your hand, but also, as you see here, right, he has his left shoulder directly in the receiver. He's pushing against him, and he's physical with him. So apply pressure. The more you apply pressure, the more you're going to disrupt timing again, right? It's all about disrupting timing. Now, the setting of this drill is real simple. The receiver will have 15 yards to go, and within those 15 yards, we're going to ask him to break down 3 times. So he's going to sprint, break down, sprint, break down, sprint, break down, okay? And then the only thing we're looking at for the DB is all those key points, right? And then the other thing is reaction time. So once those hips starts breaking down, those feet starts chopping, are you overrunning that, or are you able to stick within, underneath that receiver and break in his hip? So that's basically all we're looking for in that drill. The second drill we're going to look at is breaks, all right? So now I drew that drill only for corners, okay, for corners, a corner's perspective. Obviously, you can change our route if you're playing halfbacks, if your halfbacks or Sams are playing press, right? And you can change that comeback for a corner route or for a deep out, right? It's up to you there. But the way we do is, now we're at the top of the route, all right? So the thing is, we're running a lot in practices. So when I'm trying to do break drills like that, I'm trying just to focus on playing the ball and getting to the receiver. I don't want the receivers and the DBs to be running a full route, just because I think we're doing one-on-ones for that anyway. So we're just trying to break up, the different parts of the route. Now, if we're talking about the drill, right, we'll have the DB one by one inside the receiver. Okay, so now we won't be as tight, just to force the DB to find the receiver as the receiver is away from him. Okay, so I don't want the DB to flip his head and look at the ball if I don't have contact with the receiver. So we'll be one by one. The receiver will have three choices. Okay, so he's either gonna run a dig, a comeback, or a post. If he runs a comeback or a post, in this instance, we'll ask him to do 2 vertical steps before breaking. Okay, so it would be the same thing if we're playing halfback. We'll have 2 vertical steps before the post or the corner, and then the dig or the out will just be square out, so right away off the break. Okay, what we're looking at from the DB. Okay, so first thing is we're looking at him. We want him to find the receiver. So I don't want the DB on that dig to just flip his head and try to look at the ball right away, right? Because we have no clue where the receiver is going. So find the receiver, put your near hand on him, make sure you have that near hand to him. So again, proper hand, okay, comes back to that near hand principle. So if we're in a dig on a post, in this instance, the DB would have his left hand on the receiver, right, to make sure he keeps contact. Now, there's a coach I had before, and I'm using that terminology again, is that third eye, right? So your hand is like a third eye. As long as your hand is on the receiver, you know where he is, even if you're not looking at him, right? So once you get in proper position, as long as you have contact with the receiver, then you're allowed to flip your hand, because that hand is still telling you where the receiver, your head, because that hand is still telling you where the receiver is, okay? Now, once you have contact, you want to make sure you lean on that receiver. So we're running a dig, right? We get contact, we're in a good position. Make sure you try to be physical and try to lean as much to deroute a little bit, right? To derail and not be as sharp as it should, just like for the post and the dig, right? Now, just to come back with proper hand, right? Obviously, if we get a comeback route, we would flip that hand. So same thing with a corner or an out. We'd try to bring our right hand, in this case, to the receiver so that we end up being between the ball and the receiver, okay? Coming back to leverage, which we discussed a little bit earlier. We want to be between the ball and the receiver. The more we are, the more chances we have of that ball either falling on the ground or of us making a play on that ball. And then the last thing is, once you're in that good position, your hand is on, you're leaning, see the ball, right? So if you're close and you're in that good position, well, flip your head, make a play on the ball, become the receiver. Now, if you're not in a good position and you're not able to put a hand on, we still want you to see the ball, but what we're going to ask you is see the ball through the receiver's hands, right? So again, it comes back to playing the hands. You're not in a good position, don't flip your head. You're not going to be able to make a play on that ball. But make sure you see the ball, closing into the receiver as soon as his hands are up. Make sure you play those hands and force the ball on the ground, all right? Now, there's multiple techniques you could use with that, right? We're not going to discuss that right now, but make sure you use your hands and see the hands to play the ball through the hands if you're not in proper position. And then the last drill, obviously I said it, right? You play press, you're going to get some fade all day long, right? That's what teams will try to play on you. And it's okay with that. So now we want to have a drill where we're going to be one by one, just like the break drill before. Again, just like the break drill, we're not asking the receiver to run 100%, right? We're asking the receiver to run like 75 to 80 just to have kind of a challenge. But we don't want a 4-4 kid running away from a 4-8 kid just because he can't catch him up, right? So we'll have that receiver jogging a little bit more. Now, once the ball is in the air, though, I want the receiver to not fight at all costs, but I want a receiver to give a little bit of a resistance, right? So either try to push off as well, try to get to the ball so that we can work on our reactions there, okay? Now, we're going to teach 2 different things in terms of the fade, all right? So depending if we're in phase or out of phase, we're going to play different things. And it comes back to the break drill we said earlier, right? So if you have proper contact with the receiver, like we're seeing here on the left, right? We'll have our near hand on the receiver. We will lean on the receiver, and we will try to look at the ball because we're in a proper position, okay? Now, you're going to see here, right? If you're in this position, you want to have, as I said, our left hands or near hand on the receiver. That's the hand that's also going to secure tackle, right? So we want to make sure that hand, once we put our right hand for the ball, that left hand now has to be able to go around that receiver and be close, or at least secure the tackle and give us another day, another down to live if we get caught on that, right? So we're going to play the ball with our right hand and lean with our left hand and play physical there, all right? Again, same exact position. the ball will be thrown back shoulder, right? If we're able to lean properly, we should still be able to bring our inside hand, so our right hand there to the ball, even on a back shoulder if we're leaning hard enough, right? Again, if we're not leaning hard enough, we'll get pushed off and we won't be able to make a play there. So we need to be real physical on that ball if we're in phase. Now, if we're out of phase, we'll basically flip our hands, right? So obviously we'll play the hands, so we want to make sure we see the ball coming through the hands and play the hands, but the way we use our hands will differ, right? So instead of having our near hand going for the ball, we'll have our near hand now securing the tackle, just like we see here with his right arm, okay? And then our left arm will try to go through the hands and make sure we play that ball with our left hand. Again, if we're in a position where the receiver catches the ball, we want to limit the gains. So we want to make sure we tackle him there and live another day or live another down. Okay. So it's really important that our hand that's not going for the ball. So in phase, the close hand, and out of phase, the away hand, or the close hand, sorry, is ready to make and secure that tackle as much as possible. All right. Now, in terms of the out of phase and just a few thoughts on fade play is, for us, right, when we get inside that 15-yard line or any goal line situation, right, close to the goal line, is we're taking this out of our language, right? So we're only going to play out of phase just because we don't want to be caught up. The ball's coming out quick, and now we're in a good position, so we're flipping our head, but the ball's already on top of our head, and we can't see it, right? So that's real important in terms of situation, field situation. We might tell the DBs, right, well, inside our 20, we're only playing the out of phase technique. We're not playing the other one. So that's why for me, it's important to kind of work both. And in that drill, we'll basically let the DB understand where he is with the receiver. So is he in phase? Is he out of phase? And then we're going to let him use the proper technique that he wants on that play.
Phenomenal. That's a lot of great stuff, Coach. Quite a lot of good technique there. Coach Waterman, any thoughts on what we're hearing here?
Yeah, very impressive, Coach. Really thoroughly done. Well done. One quick question. I think you sort of touched up based on it a little bit, but not to go into too much detail. But when you talk about a receiver that does that double release where they might do an outside release and try to break back into a slant, and you talk about that stab or closed hand technique, do you double stab them or do you speed turn everything? How do you handle that when they come back inside after their initial move?
So two things, right, is let's say we get a wide outside release, so we kind of open our hips up. Well, then it's going to be hard for us to double stab, right? I don't think it is feasible for some athletes, but I don't think it's feasible for every single athlete to be able to open his hips towards sprinting to the right, and then planting your foot in the ground and then double stabbing back to get inside. So wide release and we opened our hips up, we'll just teach a speed turn and try to get back inside as fast as possible, right? It's basically like we call that the oh shit technique, right? So we got beat inside, so we're like just get on a horse and try to get back on top of that receiver, right? The thing is, if we try if you try to plan and double stab and get back there, a lot of DBs will get stuck in that break, and oftentimes you'll get behind that receiver and have a hard time making a play on the ball afterwards, right? As where if you speed turn, you can you have more chances of getting back to that vertical shoulder and at least limiting the gains again. Now, if you didn't open your shoulder, if you didn't open your shoulders and your hips, and you're still in a proper position on top of that outside jab, and you're stabbing, and then the receiver wants to cross your face, I have no issues with you bring that second hand in there, okay, and really being physical. So basically becomes like a vertical release. So I have no issues with that. But the thing is, as soon as he crosses your face, I really want you to get that hand off, that second hand off, rip under that shoulder, and that second hand will be the one you're putting at the ball, right? So that close hand will rip under the shoulder to make sure you're leaning, and then that far hand now becomes the hand that you're playing the ball with, basically. So you don't want to get stuck in there with two hands too long.
Fantastic.
That's great. I have just a quick question to finish off this portion of our talk as well. If you want to be aggressive, and let's say the receiver's off the line of scrimmage, he has a waggle or they have a tight end, is that a whole different presentation for you, or are you using some of these same techniques, or what's your thought process on that?
That's a great question. I mean, I said it earlier, we almost only play catch technique in terms of man, right? So to me, catch is like a press, but off the line, right? So we're not really taking any back pedal steps. We're not bailing, right? We're really tight. We're shuffling. We're kicking. We're inching. So we're basically using the same techniques. The only thing that would differ, I'd say, is if the receiver is off the line, we'll work a little bit that line of scrimmage drill where we work on the release. We'll work at it a little bit differently. but the trail and follow will be the same. The break drill will be the same. The downfield play drills will be the same. The mirror drill I'll still use. It's really just a line of scrimmage drill. We'll do all those releases from a 4 or 5 yards depth, right? So that way we're working on, if the receiver crosses my face, which hand do I bring first, right? So we're going to have, the difference is we're going to teach more a little bit of a shuffle step of those first release instead of a kick, because we already have our depth, right? So we don't need to gain too much. So we'll teach a little bit more of a shuffle steps, but essentially it's very, very similar.
Right on.